Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Young and the Restless channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit like for more daily drama updates and spoilers. Your support truly means a lot and helps our channel grow every day. Now, let's jump straight into today's exciting update. The Young and the Restless is about to unleash one of its most explosive and chaotic storylines yet, as Patty Williams spirals completely out of control and leaves behind a trail of devastation that could forever change the lives of everyone caught in her path. What begins as a desperate obsession quickly erupts into a life-or-death nightmare when Patty is finally caught and placed in handcuffs after stabbing Diane Jenkins with a syringe filled with what appears to be a deadly toxin. The horrifying attack sends shockwaves through Genoa City because Diane was never Patty's intended victim. Patty had carefully prepared that lethal injection for one person alone, Jack Abbott. Now, instead of watching Jack lose his life, Patty finds herself facing arrest while Diane is left fighting for survival. As the walls begin closing in around her, Patty may realize that her only chance of saving herself is to expose everyone who helped make this nightmare possible, including Victor Newman. Before everything descended into complete chaos, Diane had been spending every anxious moment at the hospital alongside Kyle Abbott and Tracy Abbott, desperately waiting for Jack to regain consciousness after the violent attack that nearly claimed his life. The atmosphere inside the hospital was heavy with fear, uncertainty, and exhaustion, as every passing minute felt painfully slow. Eventually, Tracy stepped away for a short while, and Diane and Kyle decided to return home briefly to gather fresh clothes for Jack while he underwent additional scans. It seemed like a simple errand, but that brief absence created the perfect opportunity for Patty to strike. Disguised in a convincing nurse's uniform, Patty quietly slipped past the security guard Kyle had hired, carrying a syringe hidden in her pocket that contained a deadly substance meant to end Jack's life forever. As she stood over his unconscious body, she spoke to him with chilling determination, convinced that death was the only answer, because Jack had chosen Diane over her once again. Patty had already confessed to Dr. Lawrence Markham that Jack could never be allowed to wake up, because he would expose the truth and tell police that she had been the one who stabbed him. Up until that terrifying moment, Patty believed every part of her elaborate scheme was unfolding perfectly. Her plan to frame Diane had worked far better than she could have imagined, because District Attorney Christine Williams and Detective Burrow had failed to see the obvious truth staring them in the face. Despite Kyle possessing a rock-solid alibi that could have cleared Diane immediately, investigators never seriously questioned him. Even more unbelievable was the fact that authorities accepted Dr. Markham's explanation that keeping Diane imprisoned inside his house with barred windows somehow qualified as legitimate psychiatric treatment. Instead of listening to Diane's desperate pleas that she was being held against her will, they trusted Patty and the doctor without asking the difficult questions that should have exposed the entire conspiracy. Their carelessness allowed Patty to move one step closer to murdering Jack while an innocent woman suffered for crimes she never committed. Standing beside Jack's hospital bed, Patty prepared to inject the deadly toxin directly into his IV line, fully believing she was only seconds away from completing her mission. Her breathing steadied as she tightened her grip on the syringe, convinced that once Jack was gone, no one would ever stop her. But fate intervened at the final possible moment. The hospital guard unexpectedly opened the door, assumed Patty was simply another member of the nursing staff, and casually asked how Jack was doing. Without missing a beat, Patty calmly replied that Jack had cheated death, an ironic statement considering she was literally about to make sure he didn't survive. The interruption shattered her opportunity, forcing Patty to abandon her plan before she could inject the poison. Frustrated but determined not to give up, she slipped quietly out of Jack's room, already searching for another chance to escape before anyone realized who she really was. The moment Patty stepped into the hallway, everything began falling apart. She suddenly came face to face with Diane and Kyle, and panic instantly overtook her. Realizing her disguise had failed, Patty turned and ran through the hospital corridors in a desperate attempt to escape. Kyle immediately recognized what was happening and shouted for the security guard to chase after her before she disappeared. While Kyle rushed to make certain Jack was still safe and quickly contacted Detective Burrow, another terrifying possibility consumed his thoughts. Patty's hatred for Diane had always been just as dangerous as her obsession with Jack, and Kyle feared that his mother was now Patty's next target. Those fears proved devastatingly accurate. Diane managed to catch up with Patty, and in a desperate struggle to stop the unstable woman from escaping, she grabbed Patty and fought to restrain her. For one brief moment, it seemed Diane might actually succeed. But Patty responded with horrifying violence, driving the syringe directly into Diane's neck before anyone could stop her. Within moments, hospital security and police officers flooded the area, finally overpowering Patty before she could hurt anyone else. On Thursday's episode, Detective Burrow officially places Patty under arrest, as her long campaign of terror appears to reach its inevitable conclusion. But even as Patty is led away in handcuffs, another desperate race against time begins. Kyle immediately scoops Diane into his arms and rushes her toward emergency medical treatment, knowing every second could mean the difference between life and death, depending on whatever poison Patty injected into her body. At nearly the same moment, another emotional breakthrough unfolds elsewhere in the hospital, as Jack finally regains consciousness, with Tracy faithfully waiting by his bedside. It is a moment filled with relief, hope, and overwhelming emotion. Yet that relief lasts only briefly, because Jack has no idea the woman he loves has just become the latest victim of Patty's madness. As Jack slowly begins remembering the horrifying attack, fragmented memories quickly return with startling clarity. He tells Tracy that Patty was the one who stabbed him, confirming what everyone close to him had already suspected all along. The tragedy is that the authorities refused to believe the obvious until the evidence became impossible to ignore. Tracy gently explains everything that has happened while Jack lay unconscious, including the unbelievable fact that Patty accused Diane of the attack, and that Diane was actually arrested because investigators believed the false story. She reassures Jack that now he is finally awake, he can tell the police exactly what happened and completely clear Diane's name. Neither of them, however, realizes that while they are celebrating Jack's survival, Diane has already become Patty's newest victim and is now desperately fighting for her own life after being injected with a mysterious and potentially fatal toxin. First, Jack stood at death's door, and now Diane may be facing the very same terrifying fate. As Patty's violent rampage finally comes to light, the consequences begin spreading far beyond the walls of the hospital, exposing a series of astonishing failures that can no longer be ignored. Christine Williams now finds herself in an impossible position, forced to admit that the case against Diane is collapsing before her eyes. The truth is finally breaking through every lie that Patty carefully constructed, and there is simply no way the district attorney can continue pretending Diane was responsible for Jack's stabbing. The charges against Diane will have to be dropped. And with Jack now fully capable of identifying his real attacker, Patty's deception is effectively over. Yet while Diane's innocence is finally being recognized, another troubling reality is beginning to surface. Dr. Lawrence Markham, the psychiatrist who insisted Diane belonged locked inside his home with barred windows, is suddenly facing serious questions of his own. It is becoming painfully obvious that Diane had been telling the truth from the very beginning, but almost no one chose to believe her until the evidence became impossible to deny. The closer investigators look at Dr. Markham's actions, the more suspicious his involvement becomes. It is difficult to imagine him accepting responsibility for everything that has happened without trying to protect himself first. Faced with the possibility of criminal charges and professional ruin, Dr. Markham may decide that his only chance of survival is to shift every ounce of blame onto Patty, portraying himself as nothing more than another victim manipulated by an unstable woman. But Patty has never been the type to quietly accept punishment while everyone else escapes responsibility. If Dr. Markham abandons her to save himself, she may retaliate in the most explosive way imaginable by revealing the powerful figure who allegedly helped set this entire nightmare into motion. At that point, Victor Newman's name could suddenly become the center of one of Genoa City's biggest criminal investigations, transforming what began as Patty's arrest into a scandal capable of shaking one of the city's most influential families. Patty is now staring at two grim possibilities for her future: spending the rest of her life behind prison bars, or being committed indefinitely to a psychiatric institution. Neither option offers much hope, and that desperation could motivate her to tell investigators everything she knows about Victor's involvement. According to Patty, Victor was the man who brought her back to Genoa City with one objective: to destroy Jack and Diane's marriage once and for all. She could reveal that Victor paid her to kidnap Jack and hide him aboard the yacht that Victor himself financed. Even more disturbing, Patty's version of events claims that Victor was the one who drugged Jack's liquor before everything spiraled into disaster. If those allegations prove true, the list of possible crimes becomes staggering. Hiring a dangerously unstable woman to abduct Jack is horrifying enough, but drugging him and setting into motion the events that led to his sexual assault would carry consequences far beyond an ordinary personal vendetta. Christine is fully aware of Victor's bitter history with Jack Abbott and the deep resentment that has fueled their rivalry for years. Because of that history, Patty's accusations may sound far more believable than Victor would like. If investigators discover evidence supporting Patty's claims, Victor could suddenly find himself facing multiple felony charges. Yet, Patty may not stop with the truth alone. Cornered and desperate, she could choose to exaggerate her story even further by claiming Victor specifically hired her to murder Jack, rather than merely destroy his marriage. Making matters even worse for Victor is the mysterious bag of cash Patty possesses, money that could potentially be traced directly back to him. If investigators connect that cash to Victor, it could become powerful evidence that ties him to Patty's activities in ways that are impossible to explain away. What once looked like another Newman scheme hidden safely in the shadows could suddenly become the centerpiece of a criminal prosecution. Adding even more intrigue to the unfolding drama is a major summer spoiler, hinting that Victor and Nikki Newman's marriage will be tested like never before. Many viewers initially assumed that prediction referred to Nikki's ongoing blindness, but the true crisis may be something far more devastating. If Patty exposes Victor's secret arrangement or falsely insists that he paid her to kill Jack in addition to everything else, the damage to his personal life could be enormous, regardless of what the legal system ultimately proves. Police investigations would be only the beginning. Victor would also have to answer to his own family, and perhaps no one would be more devastated than Nikki. Learning that Victor willingly brought Patty back into their lives, fully aware of her dangerous obsession with Jack and her history of violent instability, could completely shatter Nikki's trust. She would have every reason to question how far Victor was truly willing to go in pursuit of revenge. The reality is that Victor understood exactly who Patty was before he ever invited her back to Genoa City. He knew she had an unhealthy fixation on Jack, that her emotions could quickly become deadly, and that she was capable of unpredictable violence whenever her obsession consumed her. That knowledge makes his alleged decisions even more disturbing, because bringing Patty back into Jack's orbit was always an enormous gamble with innocent lives. Some may even begin wondering whether Victor secretly believed Patty would eventually eliminate Jack for him, without Victor ever needing to dirty his own hands. If investigators begin pulling apart every detail of Patty's operation, Dr. Markham could also decide to strengthen his own defense by claiming Victor financed far more than anyone previously realized. The psychiatrist and Patty might even tell authorities that Victor paid for every stage of the conspiracy, leaving him to shoulder the blame for everything they accomplished together. Whether those accusations are completely truthful or partially motivated by self-preservation, they would create an explosive legal and personal disaster unlike anything Victor has faced in years. Another unanswered question only deepens the mystery. Patty had been paying Dr. Markham to keep Diane locked inside his house for what was intended to be a long-term captivity. But Patty has never been portrayed as someone with enough financial resources to sustain an operation of that scale. That raises an unsettling possibility that is yet to be fully explored. What if Victor's involvement extended far beyond Jack's kidnapping? If Victor secretly financed Diane's imprisonment as well, the conspiracy would become even darker than viewers initially believed. Even without proving that possibility, Victor's confirmed actions already paint a troubling picture. He allegedly paid Patty to abduct Jack, and he knowingly drugged the liquor that set so many tragic events into motion. Combined with the suspicious bag of cash that Patty still possesses, investigators may finally have tangible evidence capable of connecting Victor directly to Patty's criminal activities. The question is no longer whether Patty committed terrible crimes, but whether someone far more powerful quietly enabled her every step of the way.